refuting rumors, why Paul Ryan says he won't run for president, seeking equal pay for women, the politics behind the proposal, celebrity appearance on Capitol Hill, how Bono's fame helps attract attention to a cause, and a new face in Washington. Pope Francis names the Vatican's new ambassador to the United States. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, April 12th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. That's the end of it, says Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. From the White House, Lauren Ashburn follows a late-breaking political development tonight.
Speaker Ryan just announced he will rule himself out of running for president and will not accept a nomination at the Republican convention in July. Jason Calvi is on Capitol Hill with the latest.
Lauren, for weeks, commentators have suggested that Paul Ryan could be the nominee at a contested convention. He's repeatedly said, no way. But as it looks more and more likely that Donald Trump will not have enough delegates to clinch the nomination before the convention, Paul Ryan's name has been amplified. So today, he says he wants to end the speculation once and for all. Taking to the mic at the Republican National Committee headquarters, Ryan says the nominee should be someone who is actually running for president. Speaker Ryan says all the talk of him as a surprise nominee is a major distraction.
We have too much work to do in the House to allow this speculation to swirl or to have my motivations questioned. So let me be clear. I do not want, nor will I accept the nomination for our party.
Ryan says he's giving policy speeches because he's trying to forward a positive, conservative vision for the Republican Party. He says he wants to give Americans a clear choice as they vote in the congressional races this fall. Paul Ryan said many times, though, in the fall, this last fall, that he would not be the Speaker of the House. And look where he is right now, Speaker of the House. When asked about that today, Brian, he says it's like comparing apples to oranges. Lauren?
Thanks, Jason. In other news, our road to the White House coverage, Republican candidate John Kasich called out his fellow candidates in what's being called the two-path speech.
And it's from this higher path that we are offered the much greater view. And imagine for a moment with me that view. Fear turns to hope because we remember to take strength from one another.
Meanwhile, Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders' favorable ratings are the best in the field. According to a new AP GFK poll, Sanders' unfavorable is 48 to 39%, and his rating is up from the last poll. Despite those figures, the same poll shows Clinton is up 14 points over Sanders in New York. According to a new NBC Wall Street Journal Marist poll, Donald Trump is winning New York. 54% of likely Republican primary voters say they'll vote for him, followed by John Kasich at 21%, Ted Cruz at 18%. Trump said he'd consider Kasich, Marco Rubio, and Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker for VP. All said no. Off the campaign trail, it's Equal Pay Day, and President Obama headed to Capitol Hill to dedicate a monument to women's equality. And he vows he will close the wage gap, urging Congress to pass the Fair Pay Act. The president says it's a simple idea. There should be equal pay for equal work.
I want young girls and boys to come here 10, 20, 100 years from now to know that women fought for equality. It was not just given to them.
The Independent Women's Forum countered with this statement. Despite data proving otherwise, feminist groups, Democratic lawmakers, and presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders continue to rely on the left's favorite faulty statistic to trick women into thinking the workplace is systematically hostile to women. It's worth noting that suffragettes were overwhelmingly pro-life. According to Feminists for Life, Alice Paul said, quote, "Abortion is the ultimate exploitation of women." The Pope addressed gender pay-based disparities last year by saying income disparities are pure scandal. Brian?
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. 3 people are detained in Brussels for questioning in connection with the Paris terror attacks last November. Belgian federal prosecutors say the three were picked up after a morning search in an upscale district of Belgium's capital city. A statement says a judge will decide whether they should remain in custody. Brussels was home to many of the attackers who struck the French capital November 13th, killing 130 people. World-renowned musician Bono testifies before Congress today about preventing terrorism. Catherine Szeltner has the story from Capitol Hill tonight. Catherine?
Brian, Bono testified on the role that foreign assistance can play in combating violent extremism. He says aid is not charity, it is national security. The U2 frontman is no stranger to Capitol Hill.
My name is Bono. I'm the co-founder of the One campaign, and I'm just going to jump right into it because I've been told not to filibuster.
Artist turned activist Bono testifying on the refugee crisis and violent extremism today. His nonprofit RED fights AIDS in Africa. It's a division of the One campaign, created to combat poverty. It's not Bono's first tour in D.C. While he had many fans in today's hearing,
there are millions of people who will never know your name, never be able to purchase your music or go to one of your shows. All they know is their life is better because of the work you've done.
As a wannabe musician, I could only dream of one day opening for Bono. So thank you, and thank you to the ranking member for making that dream come true.
should we celebrate celebrities on Capitol Hill? Catholic and culture commentator Ashley McGuire says it depends on the cause.
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. I think we've seen examples of celebrities using their name for very good causes. I think you look at Angelina Jolie, and she's someone who's really raised awareness about violence against women. But then on the other hand, you have celebrities like Kerry Washington, who've teamed up with the likes of Wendy Davis to advocate for things like late-term abortion.
McGuire says even if you don't agree with every decision a superstar makes, there are moments to be grateful for their work.
But I think by and large, celebrities have tried to use their names for good causes, and I think when they do, they deserve some credit.
In a statement to EWTN, the Red Campaign says they do fund condom distribution for HIV prevention. Pope Benedict XVI has said that focusing on condom use is not the way to deal with the evil of HIV infection. Brian.
Thank you, Catherine Szeltner on Capitol Hill. Well, we don't know what they ate, but the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman had breakfast with President Obama's Supreme Court nominee this morning. Republican leaders say they will not hold hearings on Merrick Garland's nomination. After the meeting with Garland, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley says that hasn't changed.
It was a very friendly meeting. I enjoyed talking with him, but nothing has changed.
Grassley says he thanked the judge for his service. He says he explained why the Senate won't be moving forward during this hyper-partisan election year. Democrats accuse Republicans of failing to do their constitutional duty. Republican leaders believe the next president should nominate a successor to the late Justice Antonin Scalia. Pope Francis appoints his new diplomatic representative to the United States. Archbishop Christophe Pierre, a native of France, will now serve as apostolic nuncio to the U.S. He previously served in that same capacity for Mexico. Pierre replaces Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who is now 75, the mandatory age of retirement for bishops. USCCB President Archbishop Joseph Kurtz thanks Archbishop Vigano for his service and welcomes his successor, saying, "On behalf of my brother bishops in the United States, I extend Archbishop Pierre a heartfelt greeting and my prayerful support as he embarks on his service to our country." A lawsuit against a Catholic hospital system is dismissed in federal court. The American Civil Liberties Union lawsuit sought to require Trinity Health Corporation to perform abortions. Matt Bowman is senior counsel with the Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the pro-life medical groups that intervened in that case. Why did the ACLU sue Trinity?
To force them to perform abortions. The ACLU takes the position that if you're in the medical profession, you have to destroy babies, even if you came into that profession and you run your religious hospital system in order to preserve life and not to destroy it.
So on what legal grounds was their suit thrown out?
The judge said basically they didn't have any evidence, and this isn't the first suit that they've gotten thrown out, but they went into the case, and what a lot of people don't know is there are specific federal laws, many of which have been on the books since after Roe versus Wade was enacted by the Supreme Court, there are specific laws that say you can't force people or health entities to perform abortions, and the ACLU wanted the court to ignore all of those.
So do you think this settles this, or will there be an appeal in this case?
I think there will be an appeal or some other additional action. The ACLU has a national campaign to try to force religious entities and health workers to be involved in an abortion. And really what they're ultimately doing is they're taking away the right of pro-life women to choose a pro-life doctor or to go to a religious hospital.
Are there similar suits like this still out there, or more to come, perhaps?
There are. They're all over the country. Alliance Defending Freedom is involved in many cases to protect the health care right of conscience, especially to preserve the sanctity of human life, and we're going to keep battling on that front.
There are plenty of places and opportunities for women to seek an abortion if that's truly what they need or want. Why force Catholic hospitals and other religious groups to do this?
Because the abortion industry is withering on the vine. You won't be able to maintain this killing industry unless you force people to be involved. And that's been the agenda of the abortion side for over 40 years.
Interesting perspective. Matt Bowman with the Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
Coming up, a religious objection to abortion drugs, why one pharmacist hopes the Supreme Court takes up the case. And a court battle tied to Planned Parenthood, the Thomas More Society's Peter Breen explains what's at stake. Pope Francis uses Twitter to promote his message about the joy of love. Today he tweeted, "The home is the place where we learn to appreciate the beauty of the faith, to pray and serve our neighbor." The Pope also tweeted, "It is essential that children see that prayer is something truly important for their parents." Thank you for joining us this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. More than a dozen Democratic lawmakers want to repeal an incoming Mississippi religious freedom law. It protects those who believe what the church teaches about marriage and sexuality. A week after Republican Governor Phil Bryant signed the bill, Democratic Representative Jay Hughes says he'll try to undo it before it becomes law July 1st. With Republicans controlling both the House and Senate, the Democrats are unlikely to succeed. North Carolina's governor may seek some changes to a controversial law he signed last month. Governor Pat McCrory says he wants lawmakers to restore the right to sue over discrimination in state court. He insists the law's provisions of gender-specific bathroom access will not change. Several more groups are canceling planned gatherings in North Carolina in protest of the law. Well, some pharmacists say Washington state is forcing them to violate their faith by prescribing the morning after pill. The U.S. Supreme Court will decide this week whether or not to hear their case. Jason Calvi profiles a Christian businessman who wants the High Court to weigh in.
Greg Stormans and family run Ralph's, a grocery store and pharmacy founded by his grandfather in Olympia, Washington.
We will sell every life-saving drug, every life-healing drug, but we will not sell any drug which ends a life or results in an abortion.
He refuses to sell morning after pills. The FDA-approved labeling says Plan B may stop a fertilized egg from attaching to the uterus. Washington state says all pharmacies must dispense the drug, with no exemptions for religious or personal reasons. Rod Schaefer is the former CEO of the Washington State Pharmacy Association. He says he sat at the table with Planned Parenthood and NARAL to discuss the rule and the possible exemptions.
I don't have the expertise to fill that particular prescription. Should I refer? Absolutely. I don't have the equipment. You know, all the business reasons, they would go, yes, yes, yes. And then you would say, but I have a conscious objection to this. And they would go, no. That was the only thing on the table that they would said no.
The Stormans and two other Washington pharmacists won their initial case against the state.
Federal court found that what they were trying to do is to, quote, stamp out, end quote, religious objections to Plan B and to Ella.
But the appeals court ruled against the Stormans, saying refusal to serve could lead the patient to feel shame. And speed is particularly important considering the time-sensitive nature of emergency contraception.
This is the first time in America we have forced healthcare providers to participate in the taking of human life.
Many groups are supporting the Stormans case, filing briefs at the Supreme Court, including the American Pharmacists Association and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They predict that Washington Catholic hospitals will soon be targeted under this Washington state rule. Brian?
And why is this case so important nationally, Jason?
Alliance Defending Freedom tells me that many activists are watching this case, and they're going to be making moves to put this kind of rule in liberal states if the Supreme Court doesn't pick up this case on Friday.
All right, Jason Calvi, thank you. An Illinois court upholds a pro-life group's right to free speech. The group, Created Equal's awareness campaign, exposes medical waste giant Stericycle for enabling Planned Parenthood's abortion business. Peter Breen is special counsel with Thomas More Society, representing the group Created Equal in court. Peter, what evidence is there that Stericycle is enabling Planned Parenthood?
Well, the Ohio Attorney General, Mike DeWine, recently did a survey of the practices of Planned Parenthood in Ohio. He asked them, where do you dispose of the human fetal remains? And they told him, Stericycle. And that company is headquartered in Illinois. It is an S&P 500 listed multi-billion-dollar organization. And so that is why Created Equal targeted them for their latest campaign.
How is Created Equal going about this campaign, which, of course, Stericycle has tried to stop?
Well, they've taken a unique and very grassroots approach. They're leafleting in the neighborhood of the CEO. So they're calling attention to the neighbors and his friends that the CEO and his company are involved with Planned Parenthood. And it's been, the theory is, if Stericycle stops servicing Planned Parenthood won't have anywhere to dispose of the human remains. And you would actually have to then, we don't know what they would be able to do, because they would have no way to dispose of the victims of abortion.
So this is not a local case. This is a global company that's servicing Planned Parenthood across the board.
Absolutely. Across the country, it's a multi-billion-dollar, multinational S&P 500 listed company headquartered in and around Lake County, Illinois.
Well, it sounds like a pretty harsh campaign that Created Equal is working on. You successfully argued that it is in their free speech rights to do so. Just make your point.
If a small band of pro-life activists in this case are not protected by the free speech right of the First Amendment, even when the communications are direct, they're ugly. I mean, this is not. Abortion is a difficult business, and so they have taken a very direct mode of speaking about the CEO. But if they don't have those rights, then what rights would anyone else have? What right would a politician have to attack their political opponent? I mean, should we be going to court every time a union decides to picket a non-union shop, or your 40 Days for Life is out there at the abortion facility and says something, well, I don't think that's right? The courts don't have jurisdiction to govern that kind of speech.
So Created Equal can now continue with this campaign, right?
Absolutely. And we were in court against some of the biggest law firms in the country. They had a former U.S. attorney there to argue their side on behalf of this very large corporation against this small band of pro-life activists. And so we were glad to be able to defend the First Amendment.
Peter Breen with the Thomas More Society. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Hey, thank you, Brian.
Up next, how anti-Christian attitudes are cultivated in Pakistan's school system. And Jordan's king will personally pay to renovate the world's holiest Christian site. Persecution is the daily bread of the church, Pope Francis says in his homily at today's morning mass. Referring to Christians killed on Easter Sunday in Pakistan, he says, they were martyred because they were celebrating the risen Christ. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. And Catholic bishops in Pakistan call for the removal of all hateful language used in school textbooks. They say the nation's educational system promotes intolerance towards Christians and other religious minorities. Wyatt Goolsby reports.
Brian, the Pakistani bishops say the structure of their country's education must be changed and the whole curriculum must be modified. A new study released today shows how Christians and other minorities are too often negatively portrayed. This afternoon, supporters of Pakistan's Peace and Education Foundation presented their findings in Washington. The report found public textbooks are full of factual errors. They also portray non-Muslim citizens as outsiders, unpatriotic, and inferior. Here's an example. In 6th grade Islamic studies, the history textbooks in one region talking about Muslim rule in the 8th century says Christians learned tolerance and kind-heartedness from Muslims. The fair treatment and good governance of Muslims improved the living standards of the region. They started to live prosperous and peaceful lives under the patronage of Muslims.
We are very alarmed by this, and obviously the significance of the situation with school materials and textbooks is, are you putting poison into kids at these earliest stages of their education, or are you beginning to educate them in the basic principles of tolerance, inclusion, pluralism?
Dr. Katrina Lantos-Sweat is with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, who sponsored the study. She says it's that message of intolerance that has long-lasting consequences. Christians and other minorities often face violence, discrimination, and even death threats in Pakistan. Some cite the Easter Sunday bombing in Lahore as an example. That attack killed several dozen Christians. The study also had several recommendations, like promoting the idea of religious freedom and a respect for all people of faith. They also say historical inaccuracies should be corrected and reflect viewpoints from different perspectives. Brian.
Certainly. Thank you, Wyatt. And the Holy Father's new document on marriage and family goes far beyond hot-button issues to share biblical insights on true love. Father Robert Gahl, professor of moral philosophy at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, joining us from Rome. Father Bob, the chapter on married love is overshadowed by some more controversial issues in Chapter 8. Give us an idea of what the Pope is telling us in Chapter 4.
There's a tremendous amount of depth in Chapter 4 that's really worthwhile meditating upon slowly. It's what the Pope recommends. And it teaches us some very deep things about love, drawing from the Bible, especially from St. Paul. First letter to Corinthians, his hymn on charity. He says, for instance, and also drawing from St. Thomas Aquinas, it's more important to desire to love than to be loved. And in fact, he refers to mothers, and he says that St. Thomas Aquinas says that mothers love more than anyone else. So it's a challenge to mothers and a challenge to all of us to love people in that way that is truly unconditional, without desiring that we be loved so much, to desire to love the others.
Those points are not making the headlines. This is a very dense document. How would you suggest we can, as lay people, really digest this?
So a number of practical things would really be helpful. First of all, to read it very slowly. For instance, just to read one of the sections in a chapter a day, and to consider it before God, and then to consider it along with one's spouse, or perhaps to consider it along with a good friend, a friend of the same sex that we can speak with on a friendly basis about how we can deal better with our own spouses. But with our own spouse, also it's helpful to think about how we can live this better with our children. Because the Pope mentions that children look to their parents to find God's love for them. And therefore, parents are called to this, husband and wife are called to this tremendous challenge to reflect God's infinite love for us, for all of us, and to show that towards our children.
The Joy of Love. It's a deep document. We appreciate you digging a little deeper into it for us. Father Bob Gahl joining us from Rome tonight. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Brian. God bless.
And Jordan's King Abdullah says he'll personally fund the renovation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. 3 major Christian denominations operate the church in Jerusalem, believed to be the holy site where Jesus was crucified, buried, and rose. The Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian Orthodox churches agree to cooperate in the restoration. Jordan controlled the old city of Jerusalem until Israel captured it in 1967. That Arab nation continues to play a role safeguarding Muslim and Christian holy sites there. Well, a 400-year-old painting found in an attic in France could be the work of Italian master Caravaggio. It depicts the biblical heroine Judith beheading an Assyrian general. It's thought to have been painted in Rome in the 1600s. The owners of a house in Toulouse discovered the painting while fixing a leak in their roof. The French expert who retrieved the painting wholeheartedly believes it's the work of the Italian master.
I immediately thought of Caravaggio because of the face of the Judith. I've never seen a face like this. These eyes, I've never seen anything like. And to me, it was obvious from the first minute that it was by Caravaggio.
The picture has been given national treasure status in France. It's valued at $135 million, but has not yet been authenticated as the work of Caravaggio. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night. God bless.